Welcome to the 7th episode of VSTML 2023 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Harmstone, and joining me this season is the guy who is always pleased to have an experienced gentleman behind him, David Bindley.
I'll take box 69, please.
And I suppose we better start with the worst news of the week, because in their quest to not just irritate us, but really irritate us, not only is Netflix Mole back, but they announced it literally the day our last episode came out.
Boo!
Boo, indeed. And bearing in mind that almost certainly that's going to happen again next week, because the 1st of March tends to be when they start doing Belkia news, and that's when next week's episode comes out for us.
At least they didn't stick Greg on that dating show they're doing.
Yet.
Yes.
The key word is yet,
Yeah.
because they have actually changed the entry requirements apparently for Netflix Mole Season 2 as well, because they originally announced it that you had to be from the US, Canada, Puerto Rico, or the US Virgin Islands, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And now they've just changed it to you've got to be a US citizen, which I think has disappointed our dear friend Logan Saunders.
Suck a dick, Quebec.
I would have gone for the more subtle reference of "suck it, Quebec," but I mean, you do you.
I often do. It's going to be one of those episodes, isn't it?
Yeah, but at least we got an episode title straight away. And one thing I did realise I did have to mention last week that I completely forgot is the fact that Anke made everyone cover stars last week.
Oh.
She used her power as the editor to do a photo shoot with all her friends.
Of course.
And the new Dutch Traitors cast came out as well, featuring Nathan from China and Thomas from Oregon as well.
Ooh. I've still got to watch Dutch Traders. Still got to watch American Traders.
Yeah, US Traitors was actually... It obviously wasn't as good as the UK one, but it was solidly not shit.
Oh.
Which is, I suppose, the best I can offer them right now.
Yeah.
It wasn't as bad as Netflix Mole, put it that way.
Very few things are.
And yet they're trying again.
Yep. Can't wait to see how badly they do it this time.
I have to admit, I'm not surprised that they're recommissioning it. I'm just thoroughly, thoroughly disappointed.
No, I'm not surprised either. It seemed to do really well when it was on, and then people just forgot about it 2 weeks later.
Yeah, like they were spinning it as, oh, it was top 10 in the UK, but it's like nothing else came out on Netflix around that time, and it disappeared after a day.
Yeah, it's not like, Squid Game where we're still talking about it. It was, viral for 45 minutes, and then disappeared, pretty much.
If only it would disappear permanently.
Yeah.
And talking of our dear sweet Canadian Logan Saunders, he's actually bothered to watch the last 2 episodes. So his suspect list for week 5 was Anke, then Jurre, then Daniel, then Renomi, then Nabil, and then Soy. And his week 6 one was Anke, Renomi, Jurre, Daniel, Soy, respectively. And his top suspect for week 7 is, of course, Veronica Mars.
Well, luckily it's not Anke.
Yeah, Anke would have been his second choice, but this week, given we are down to 4 people left, is only 1 suspect each. Do you know what Logan's been up to this week, by the way?
Yeah. It's funny you talk about, him vanishing, because he's been hiding in plain sight 20 meters away from a survivor camp, waiting for somebody to stumble over him while they walk past to take a piss. He swears it's not a sex thing, but if he ends up wet and muddy, that's just a sheer coincidence.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that Logan has hidden in a bush waiting to get pissed on, would it?
No. Morning, Logan.
I think we are now testing the limits of whether Logan is listening to our podcast or not. Because we know he's recommending them to Dutch backpackers, and hello, Logan's new friends. We promise we're usually only about, I'd say 90% as mean about Logan as this. So previously, the final 6 was segregated, which is always a good idea in South Africa, for a 2-day trip through the Karoo. At an archery challenge, Soy knocked 5 of 6 eggs off, and as Logan the vegan would tell us, eggs are no match for Soy. Jurre and Daniel saved themselves by not giving in to temptation, while a 1-by-1 execution saw Nabil left all alone and sent home. And they are allegedly in Wilderness, and Rick says no one is sure who the mole is, but Nabil was a top suspect, meaning that some candidates are now realising how close they came to execution. Upcoming assignments will have a lot at stake, both personal advantages and a meeting with the mole where someone will get information worth its weight in mole money. I'm going to take exception to them saying that it's Wilderness, because it isn't. In fact, precisely 0 of the challenges this episode take place in the town of Wilderness. Most of them are either in Oudtshoorn or in George, both of which were visited by Belkia.
Of course.
And the episode title is insightful. It's day 13 and Soy makes a toast at breakfast.
Not in front of Renomi's Eggs Benedict. How rude.
I know. Does he not have any sort of respect for him?
I know. Respect the Hollandaise.
Anke tells us there are only 5 people left and that they are staying in a beautiful house in the hills. You can't swim in the sea at the moment, though, because of sharks. And if this was Gilles de Costa, he would take that as an opportunity.
Yeah. I love how she tried to put the fear of sharks into everybody, but the only one who bit is Jurre.
And Jurre says everyone is now suspicious. As it gets to the end of the process, you become more suspicious of each other.
I'm sure it's got nothing to do with the pot drain last week, and the week before, and the week before that.
It's sort of a mercy that there was no pot drain this week, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah.
This is the first episode in 4 with no pot drain task.
Well, it depends how you count the phone call.
Yeah. I wouldn't count it as them getting the money till after the phone call, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Rick then meets them in a large field, and Daniel is suspicious of the windsock. And he tells them that they are going paragliding, and the flight will earn them big money or big advantages. Each of the 5 squares gives them a different prize: €1,000, €2,000, a yoker, 2 yokers, or 3 yokers. However, only one person can land in each square, or it is worth absolutely nothing, and at least 2 people need to land in the €2,000 square to make it worth anything. In addition, they cannot negotiate until they're in the air, and their flights will only last 3 minutes.
I did like how Daniel, saw the wind vane and realised, well, it's something involving heights, and then Anke, because she's normal, looked on the ground and noticed the big targets.
Yeah. How do you feel about this challenge?
I don't hate this challenge. I think it's probably top half of the season, but this season is sort of starting from a very low base, so it's adequate. It's not remarkable. I do like it. I don't love it. I think they needed a little bit more time to negotiate, really.
Yeah, this is a sort of challenge that they do love to do occasionally. And I sort of like this version of it because they work out how to game it immediately. It's just they put their faith in Jurre.
Yeah, which is always a bad idea.
And unsurprisingly, Jurre's a little bit scared, and Soy says he's very pleased to have an experienced gentleman behind him.
Aren't we all?
Anke wouldn't normally volunteer to do it, but she's saying yes to everything on WIDM and taking advantage of the opportunities. And Renomi goes first, obviously, and we hear absolutely nothing from her beforehand.
Because of course we don't. It's Renomi.
I'm kind of fascinated to find out who you think's going next week out of her or Soy.
Do you want me to answer now or at the end of the episode?
You can leave it till the end of the episode, but I don't know which one of them's going to go next week. But they're both kind of so obviously not the mole at this point that they're just superfluous to the experience. Jurre says he gets comfortable in the seat and then it's time to negotiate. Once Anke, the last person, takes off, their 3 minutes begin. Soy suggests that Renomi and he didn't have any yokers in the last test, so they should get priority, and she should land in square 5 and he in square 4. Jurre says he planned not to violently push his opinion, but he couldn't help himself. They can earn €3,000 and a yoker each if they play it correctly, and the 3 minutes run out before they've even come up with a plan. Soy goes for number 5, contradicting his plan. Anke goes for 2, Renomi goes for 4, as does Daniel before changing his mind to 1. And he says he would prefer to go for yokers because he'd distribute them fairly, and he doesn't mind that people don't necessarily trust that he would do it. But he also doesn't want to be that player. Jurre obviously chooses number 3 because they gave him the chance to get himself a yoker, and when he lands, he even says, "Fuck that money."
I'm not sure Jurre did the right thing, even within the context of somebody who wants jokers.
No, the right thing as a mole, which, let's be honest, he is, would be to go for number 1. Because worst case scenario, no one else goes for it and they only earn €1,000. Best case scenario, someone else goes for it and you nullify it anyway.
Yeah.
And you look like a hero for going for it.
Yeah, and even in his situation as somebody who's pretending to want jokers, if you want jokers, you go for the 2 or the 3. And then you void whoever else got them. And then you don't end up 2 jokers behind someone.
Yeah, I don't think his moves really make sense
No.
this episode, to be honest.
I swear, if they put that, "Yeah, man, fuck that money" quote in the mole reveal.
They will do, you know they're going to.
I know they will. There's something else coming up later in this episode that I think they're going to stick in there as well.
We are 3 weeks away from Jurre's reveal as mole, and both of us are just so depressingly set on him now. Yeah. I would love to be wrong at this point.
Oh, yeah.
I would love a surprise Daniel reveal, but it's not going to happen.
No.
So it turns into a screaming match, obviously, Anke doesn't even understand why Daniel didn't go for number 2 as a priority, and Rick hands out the Jokers and €1,000 of 3,000 for the challenge that they did actually earn. And after they all cool off, they realise that Jurre was the one who stuck his dick in the plan, and he offers to give his Joker away. So he gives Anke a Joker, and he uses it to test her reaction, assuming she is a candidate as a result of it. We don't see Daniel get one yet.
I did quite like Rick sort of sassing Anke a little bit when he gives her the money. He's like, "It's still you? They haven't taken it off you yet?" Huh.
Yeah, it's been a whole, 3 episodes since the Penny Maester was decided. They've not changed it yet?
And they weren't even together for half that time.
No. And then Rick meets them on the beach for the second assignment. They will have 3 mini assignments, and the first 2 will lose the slowest, while only one person will survive the third. That person will earn €1,935 of the pot and have an appointment with the mole. The phone at the end of the beach is the same one that they all answered in Amsterdam when they had to endure speaking to everyone.
My condolences.
And they begin the first round tied to a pole, not unlike some of Logan's videos. To escape and run to another pole, they have to untangle themselves and get enough slack to reach it and unlock themselves. And it is all about rope management. And God, I hate that this is basically just Survivor the challenge.
Yeah. If I wanted to watch, a mediocre season of Survivor, I would have watched pretty much any season from the last decade. Like, this isn't even a particularly bad challenge. It's just, why is it on this show?
If you wanted to watch a mediocre season of Survivor, you'd be currently watching Australian Survivor Heroes vs. Villains.
Of course. I am not. Because I have standards.
A show that genuinely allowed 9 episodes to go by without explaining what was going on with a fake hidden immunity idol. There was an accidental fake hidden immunity idol.
Of course.
So Renomi's the first to run for her key, but it's not long enough, and Jurre is the first to get everything off. The second part is to unlock a number combination lock, but only with textual instructions. Sawyer is the second to escape, and he realises that the instructions are actually leading them towards writing the numbers in the sand. Renomi's the third to the boxes, and Anke comes up short. Jurre unlocks his box first and finds a grappling hook. In the third part, there are 3 shovels in a square, and he has to hook the one that he wants, and each one corresponds with a different size square that they're going to have to dig. Anke then gets her key, eliminating Daniel from the assignment. Jurre accidentally hooks the shovel for the biggest square, the yellow one, as Soy unlocks his box. Renomi unlocks hers in third, eliminating Anke. Soy gets the green shovel, and Jurre explains the third part, where they have to find 7 tubes, which will add up to €1,935, the sum of all the notes in the game from 1,000 down. Is this not the worst final 3 for us in this challenge, I think?
I think so. Even the editors sort of realized there was nothing going on here and just doubled down on the epic sort of digging editing.
Yeah, I never thought that I would miss Jeff Probst screaming "dig woman" at people, but I think it did need a dig woman occasionally.
If you have Daniel and Anke in the final 3, which of these 3 do you want to be the third one?
Probably Renomi, because she's not going to do anything. Renomi's going to play for the team because she isn't the mole.
Yeah.
I think Daniel and Anke probably would have been tempted by the dilemma, but I don't think they would have spent nearly as much as Jurre ends up.
That makes sense.
So Renomi and Jurre are on 6 tubes, while Soy's on 5. Jurre gets his 7th and then runs to the phone for his meeting with himself. He is told to remember to bring those 7 bills with him, and the phone number 081-850-8883 is definitely going to be a clue.
Yeah. I couldn't work out what the clue was going to be, but it has to be a clue, surely.
Anytime numbers appear on the mole, and they deliberately showed us the number for about a second, it does tend to be a clue. And I know you talked about the 6th episode of Sri Lanka being the one with the weird ropes alphabet game.
Yeah.
But that was probably the major clue of the season in episode 6. And it's also the one time I've ever actually spotted a mole clue when it's been happening. So I'm acutely aware whenever they give us numbers on the screen that something's going to be up with it. Did appropriately for this challenge do a little bit of digging, though. It is not a Dutch phone number, it is a South African mobile number, I think.
Oh.
It does correspond with Vodafone in South Africa.
That makes sense. I just sort of Googled the number. It came up with scams from Belgium.
08 something is an area code in Dutch phone numbers, but not 081 specifically. Because I was expecting it to be oh, this is going to be the area code of the mole or something.
Oh, yeah.
So on day 14, they are trying to work out who Jurre is going to have an appointment with, and apparently Renomi plucked her eyebrows. And everyone else is taken to a separate hotel room while Jurre goes to the art theatre to meet himself. The curtain rises to reveal a Bakelite phone on the stage again, which then begins to ring.
I love how they didn't even try and pretend he was there with somebody else.
No, I mean, whenever we've seen this sort of thing where the mole has won, in inverted commas, an advantage and gets to meet with themselves, they're at least a little bit more creative. They usually get the host to stand in.
Yeah.
So the mole tells him to look closely at the mole money, and there is a sentence on each note in one of the languages of South Africa. All of the sentences are final test questions, and some refer to upcoming challenges. The more money that Jurre spends, the more translations he will receive. What would you have done in this case?
I don't know, because I don't think it's ever really explained like how they decide which clues are given in which order. Because we hear the phone basically just go from one to the next to the next to the next. We don't see Jurre really pick, okay, I want the 25 euro one, I want the 1,000 euro one. It's kind of not really clear how he impacts anything or how they decide, how much money he spends.
Yeah, I think the tactic here, assuming you're not the mole, which Jurre obviously is to just take that piece of information. Take the piece of information that all of the sentences are in different languages and are referring to upcoming challenges. Because they're allowed their phones in this season.
Yeah.
We've seen them with their phones before. I would just take the information, write down the sentences, hand the money back to the treasurer, and Google it myself later.
Yeah.
Being brutally honest. But obviously that doesn't
sense.
make good TV.
Nah.
Me going back to the arguably very nice hotel overlooking the bay and Googling things on my phone probably isn't very interesting television.
Yeah. And even if they came up with like some excuse to, take people's phones off them, they could always, go ask a hotel staff person or something, like they did in Japan.
Like, it is still a hotel complex, it looks like. It's just
Yeah.
kind of a separate cabin they're all in.
Yeah.
Because they do, for the second challenge, actually drive out from the hotel, I think. Or it might even be towards the test.
Yeah.
So the 25 euro note asks what character trait the mole had in the spooky hotel. The 1,000 euro note asks what place the mole finished in the photo challenge. And Jurre ends up spending 1,335 euros on information and has to leave it there, giving them a total of 600 euros of 1,935 for the challenge, 1,600 of 4,935 for the episode, and 8,400 or 41,185 euros for the season so far. And they are actually still below the Czechia barrier at this point. Czechia, after 7 episodes, had 8,975.
Well, that's because their mole wasn't allowed to do anything.
So Renomi says it's genius if he's the mole to have a self-appointment, but she thinks that he saw someone else. And she takes a big risk and offers Daniel one of her yokers. It is now time for the test. 20 questions about the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows these goes home except for the mole who can never go home. Daniel, Renomi, Jurre, and Anke all have 1 yoker each, and Soy has 2. This is obviously a very atypical test because we get a lot of their suspicions before they even actually, quote-unquote, sit the test. Soy says his number one suspect, Nabil, is now out, and it is a mindfuck. In the last couple of days, he's become badly close to someone that he trusted, Renomi. She's sweet, fanatical, and aware of everything, but it doesn't change the fact that Jurre could also be the mole, given how selfish he is being. Jurre is on Daniel. It's a gut feeling. It seems so obvious it's not him that it just could be.
Because a gut feeling always works at this point in the game.
He is way too smart for his own good. Daniel has seen the fear in Soy and Renomi's eyes when it came down to that fateful execution, but Jurre is cool and aloof, and therefore the mole. Anke is on Renomi and Soy, and she's leaning more towards Renomi. They are the most fanatical people in the game, but never really made any money. And Renomi has been on Soy since day one, but the better she gets to know him, the less moling he has done. He didn't want to bond with her, he doesn't really come to talk to her, and that is very suspicious, because everyone should come to Renomi at all times.
Yes.
And I love how after last week we mocked them for pointing out that Nabil was apparently a massive character until he kind of faded into the background, to Renomi at least. Like, we haven't seen any of this content from Renomi. We haven't seen her say bond with me, Soy.
Yeah. It's like the scene where she gives Daniel the Joker and you realise you haven't seen them interact at all in 7 episodes.
No. And the test itself actually takes place at Redbury Farm, which is the home of the infamous ostrich maze. Rick gives them all a coloured pen. Throughout the maze, they will find questions about the mole, and their time will start as soon as the klaxon sounds. It will only stop when they reach him in the centre, and it is time, therefore, for a manual test and execution.
And of course, Jurre was annoyed about having to take the brown texter.
Not just the brown one, the poo brown one.
Yeah. I kind of felt like that was a little bit like how, I think last week, the week before, with the cases. He was like, oh, I didn't take a case. Look at me being good for the team. It's like, look at what colour I'm using. Like, just so they know which ones are his answers.
Yeah. How do you feel about this twist to the test?
Taken on its own, I really, really like this idea. Within the context of this season where we've had elimination twist after elimination twist after elimination twist after elimination twist, I kind of thought it was the wrong time to do it.
Yeah, I kind of like how shit stirry this entire episode is. Because obviously the first challenge is only ever meant to cause trouble. This twist is only meant to cause trouble. There is no reason to do it. It doesn't affect anyone. But you force them to have to play their yokers in front of each other again, which they did right at the start of the Karoo bit. And Renomi being worried about, having to surreptitiously play my yoker. I like them having to play the yokers publicly in front of each other and stick their colours to the mast. And then in this one, it's the exact antithesis of what you're expecting, because you expect in this sort of a challenge to go, I need to be quick, because that is an inherent advantage. But being slow is an inherent advantage here, because you can then just take your time, go around the maze for up to 45 minutes, as we found out in the end, and get information on who everyone suspects. Because if you're in the boat of like Renomi and Soy, both of whom were really big on Nabil last episode, if you're up shit creek without a paddle, you go, well, who's everyone else suspecting? Because everyone else is doing better than me. And if you then find out that Daniel is going 100% in Jurre, which he is, maybe that saves you 3 to final 4.
Yeah. This sort of challenge, you can tell who's up shit creek without a paddle, and then you can tell who's up shit creek without a boat.
And who merely is just running around drawing in poop brown.
Was he drawing though? Because we never see Jurre answer any of the questions.
Well, that's the thing. It didn't really show up on the paper that well. And the one question we did see him answer was Vies de Mol, and even then he hesitated because he nearly went for himself.
Yeah.
Which I presume was what you referred to about that coming back in the reveal thing.
Well, there was nearly answered himself for that question. He never shown actually answering any of the other ones like everyone else is. The other thing I think probably worth mentioning is, remember in Belgium how they had that egg hidden in the tunnel? If this is the same maze, that tunnel is still there. So if Jurre's starting point is on the other side of the tunnel from everyone else, that would explain why nobody found his starting point. And they can also use, I had to go underground as a clue.
Yeah, I did make a reference to the underground tunnel, I think, in my notes, but yeah, there's definitely going to be something with that underground tunnel.
Yeah.
So everyone's got a flag of their colour attached to their backs. Daniel is yellow, Jurre is poop brown, Soy is green, Renomi is red, and Anke blue. And everyone can see each other's answers as they run past. Soy claims he's pretty good at mazes, just like he was pretty good at balancing last week, and finds out that Daniel is on Jurre. He has said for a few episodes that he's been spreading, but he actually hasn't. What a naughty boy. Renomi finds lots of boards with answers about her, and she says it's great because it gets her to another round of play. Anke is the first to check in with Rick at 1929. Jurre reaches Rick, but without getting all the questions answered. Daniel gives up with 18 questions done at 22:18. Either he's right or he's getting a red screen regardless. Soy skips one question and checks in at 24:48. Renomi and Jurre get a bit lost, and everyone knows all you need to do to find the last questions is just find the underground tunnel.
Yeah.
Renomi checks in with one, missing at 29:18, and Jurre is missing two, but checks in at 29:57. I think the element of this twist that I like the most is the fact that if you want to, you don't have to do all the questions.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting twist to the test to say, actually, if you're feeling confident, don't do all the questions and just get back early.
Yeah. If you're confident enough that other people are fucking up, why waste the energy? A couple of other interesting sort of potential clues here. The whole thing with the favourite food question, where they stumble over whose answer was carbonara. Jurre does indeed like that carbonara, so much so that he used it as the answer to his describe yourself in one word question in the mole book.
Yeah, I think Jurre did imply that carbonara was his answer there, because he was a bit offended that anyone had selected carbonara.
Yeah. There's also another thing that I think is the sort of thing Venom will do. Jurre's finishing time of 29:57. Take the digits and add them together, you get 23, which is this season, which is the sort of thing they love to do, and it's always annoying.
Didn't they do that in Georgia for the final test?
I think so.
I think the mole of that season's quote-unquote time ended up being like 13:18.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a surprise that both of us suspect him.
It feels like there are a lot of potential clues in this maze challenge. Like, probably we're looking more for clues here than we're looking for information about who the mole actually is.
Yeah, because we kind of know it at this point.
Yeah.
So Jurre, Soy, and Daniel all get green screens before Anke gets the red, and the fuck bond is therefore fuck broken. And I have to say, I am so glad that I swapped her last week. It was my overriding emotion was, oh, Michelle's going to kill me when she sees this episode.
I saw one of the theories during the week. Every elimination so far this season, except for the Anik one, it's been the fourth person who's seen their test results who's got eliminated, which is interesting. And, when you think of 4, you think of, 4-leaf clovers or luck and all that sort of stuff. The Dutch word for luck is geluk, your surname, which again feels like the sort of thing they would do and we would get very annoyed by.
Yeah, I sort of twigged that one right before you said it.
Yeah.
So Anke says she was so out of her comfort zone, but she wanted to do everything and give everything a crack. She wills the pot to Renomi, and my favourite thing of the entire episode is that she still has to wear the stupid flag on her walk of shame.
I wonder if she had to try and get through the tunnel with that flag on her.
They make her walk out of the largest hedge maze in the southern hemisphere whilst wearing a flag on her back. So next time, Rick promises a safari, the laser game finally appears after 8 episodes, and Renomi proves to be a sharpshooter. I think it's very interesting the laser game's appearing next week.
Yeah.
Because, if I remember rightly, their first visit to South Africa, they took until episode 8 to do a laser game. I don't think there was a laser game until the helicopter game.
There were lasers in episode 2, but it wasn't like the laser shootout sort of thing.
Yeah, in terms of laser shootouts that they love to call the laser game, there wasn't one until he was hanging out of the helicopter defending his exemption.
Yeah.
I think. Also worth noting as well, we are 7 episodes into this season and we have not seen a single advantage that isn't a yoker.
No.
Despite them mentioning black and green exemptions in the mole book here, we haven't seen any of them. And we're obviously not going to see a black exemption now because that would be ludicrous, but there's a chance of a green exemption next week, or probably a white exemption because they like to use those for the finale one, but other than that, there's been nothing.
And you'd think if they're doing, exemption for the finale, it would have turned up in the preview. Because that's the sort of thing they like to, stick right at the very end as like the last hook.
It did feel to me like that next time trailer was missing something. I don't know what, but it felt like it was a bit of an abrupt ending to it. There's something more that they're not telling us about next week.
Well, they really, really skip over whatever that thing is where they're running up that spiral ramp or whatever it is. Because, we get, a lot of stuff about the safari and the photos and that. We get a fair bit of the laser game, and then there's, 2 seconds with that spiral thing.
Yeah. There's something they're not telling us about next week, I think.
Yeah.
So with Anke going home, Michelle now only has Soy left as her team on the pool. Logan has Renomi, and I have Daniel and Jurre, guaranteeing me someone in the final 3 this year. Removing Anke from first suspicions drops Michelle's score to 4.79, making this the first week all season that I have the best non-adjusted team score. If you adjust, Logan's is now 2.68 out of 4, mine is 2.39, and Michelle's is 2.53. Nobody had Anke in last place, but we do have a new leader, and it is Femke with a score of 12, where the minimum is 10. 7 people, Femke, A Fuzzy Orange, Fly 101, Brig, Reed, me and Michelle all have scores of 15 or lower. 4 people, Alan, Egan, Reed and Sean all had Anke at number 1. The order is now Jurre, Soy, Daniel and Renomi, the latter 2 swapped from last week. And as of Sunday evening, Jurre is the most suspected person by the Netherlands with 34%, followed by Renomi on 25, Daniel on 21, and Soy on 20. And as always, you can do the Brothers Bar Suspect List each week at suspectlist.rtvwarriors.com or the link in our bio. Quick update on our weekly suspicions as well. Anke was the first proper bloodbath of the season. You lost 3 suspicions, I lost 5, and Logan lost 1 suspicion from every single week. Yeah, Logan had her every single week in his top 2 or 3. And you and Logan both have 7 top suspects from week 1 to 6 left, and I have 8. And as I did mention earlier, only our top suspects now count towards the weekly suspicions. I know the answer. Who do you suspect?
Well, I am a creature of habit, so Renomi.
It is that bad this season. I have already pre-populated all of the documentation with your suspicion. Shall we say it together after 3?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Soy.
Daniel. No, I mean,
It's Jurre.
we both think it's Jurre. I've got Daniel in second, and then Soy and Renomi are completely irrelevant. But yeah, it's Jurre. We can't hide it.
No, I've got Soy in second, but I like literally drew numbers out of a hat for the last 3.
You know it's bad when even our friends that trust nobody are like, yeah, it's Jurre. Let's just get this over with now.
And I would just like to say, I told you so.
Yeah, get your gloating out now so you don't have to do it in 3 weeks.
Oh no, I'll still be doing it in 3 weeks.
I know you will, but I can edit it out then.
Yeah.
The more intriguing thing, I think, is who do you think's going home?
I think Soy. I think, assuming he got the red screen in episode 4, he's basically missed most of episode 5, most of episode 6, because they were split up. There wasn't really a lot in here for him to see in this episode, because they're all running around separately in the maze. There's not really a lot you can really answer questions about for the paraglide. So I don't think Soy really has a lot of information still. It's obviously not going to be Jurre, because he's the mole. It's obviously not going to be Daniel, because he's somehow the only person observant enough to see something that's staring him straight in the face. Renomi, I don't know. I think Renomi's sort of observant enough to maybe consider it, but I think she's sort of on Soy first, and then it's going to sort of depend how many of the questions apply to both of them, which one goes home. But I think my first thought is Soy's going home next week.
Yeah, the reason I think it's probably Renomi going is because we had just that little glimpse of Soy in the test scene here going, oh, Daniel's on Jurre. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether he's going to at least put some on Jurre next episode to go, maybe Daniel's onto something.
Maybe, and then if he does, I think he'd probably be splitting rather than going all in, which, in episode 8, you do not do.
No, I think it's likely that Renomi is going to probably put everything on Soy next episode, which means that all Soy has to do to survive is to put some on Jurre and make sure that he doesn't put everything on Renomi.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think there is a very real chance that we could end the season with only one person identifying them all correctly, which very rarely happens on WIDM anymore.
Well, it's happened a few times lately, because Oregon was one of those seasons, Georgia was one of those seasons.
They went through a real run of it, and then they haven't had it for a few years. Because the last one I can think of is Renaissance.
Yeah, which is a bit of a outlier, because, Mole wasn't doing anything.
Is there anything else you want to say?
I'm good.
Other than ragging on your own for the next 50 minutes?
I'm good. I do think, considering what WIDM is like with, puns about challenge titles and all that sort of stuff, like Alter Ego, the couple of the other ones that we've had this season, I'm a little bit surprised they called it, analog test instead of hedge your bets.
I'm a little bit surprised he didn't mention that it's the largest hedge maze in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
I would have thought Rick would have actually given a bit more information about the location. But yet again, Redbury Farm is to the west of George. It's not even anywhere close to Wilderness.
Hmm.
It's probably about 50 k's from Wilderness easily.
Weird.
So, thank you for listening to our VS to Mole 2023 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for another new mole in South Africa. Don't forget you can contact us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us at contact@rtvwarriors.com. Bindles is on Twitter at The Grim Recapper, and I'm MJ Helmstone. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors. Thank you as always to Rika for the subtitles. We'll see you next week.
This is not the Chinese takeaway.
Ni hao.